welcome everybody back to the Greenlight Podcast. Today I have Philip
So
Leete with
what
me.
makes it go live?
Recording.
Okay, we're already live.
Yeah.
Cool.
The
Greenlight Podcast.
Yes, the Greenlight Podcast.
Excellent name.
So you helped found Quarkmine.
Absolutely.
And you are an events production company for robotics.
Yes.
Explain what exactly that means. And are you talking pro, or are you talking elementary? Or?
I would say the definition of pro means that the players are getting paid.
Oh,
So
yeah.
in that definition, these are not pro robotics
Okay.
because nobody's getting paid. These kids are out there because they love it. But events production, we believe that if there's a competitive element to anything, it's more attractive. It's more exciting. It doesn't mean rah football competitions all in, because that might be too much. It's the wrong way to think about competition. Competition just means that you can see people who are better than you. You can see people who are worse than you. Can evaluate where you're at. And because you see that there are people trying to be better than you, and you see people that you want to be better than, it's a self-motivating internal drive to be better than you are.
Mm-hmm.
It means that for all the teachers out there, we don't have to push as hard because the students will be, again, pulling us along and telling us where they want to go. So with that premise that competitions make students want to engage more, our company, Quarkmine, tries to make it easier for schools, organizations, businesses to hold competitions. Whether it's a competition about 3D printing, or whether it's a competition about flying drones, or whether it's a competition about driving robots across a field. It doesn't matter. Once you have the equipment, the screens, the TVs, the announcers, the connections to judges, make it easy so that any school, anywhere, can host an event and gain all of the fame and glory and PR and press that goes on with knowing that you've just invited into your building a whole bunch of teams that aren't attached to your building. That's a big community piece.
So to do that, I know if a kid's growing up, they look up to superstars, whether it be in any sport, whether it be in football or
They do.
basketball, baseball. How do you create a following that someone who's 7 can watch something on YouTube and be like, oh, that's really cool, I want to do that, and have it not just be some high schoolers who like come and go and they're only there for 4 years. How you create something past high school that people can go into that can maybe inspire kids who are younger to get into something
Well,
with
in competition, I mean, just like any sports team, the team gets branded, not the players. The players come and go. They get awesome, and you love those individuals out there. But the team is what's branded. The team is what people tend to root for 20 or 30 years. They're diehard fans for that team, and they feel the triumphs and the losses as the players come and go. Same is true for any robotics team. Each school starts branding out its own identity. And there's some big ones around the state that everyone knows. Like, you say robo-dogs in certain circles, and everyone knows exactly where you're talking about.
Right.
That's Granville. But there's over 60 students involved in that program. So, but when robo-dogs show up at the field, they're like, yeah, they've got some pretty good kids. Same thing, the Killer Bees. I mean, that's a pretty intimidating name. Every year they come up with a stinger design for something. But it's actually a school out of Notre Dame Prep down in Pontiac, in Rochester area. In this area, you got the robo-runners. You go to certain areas in our region and the kids will say, I hate the robo-runners, they win everything. But they know the robo-runners. Now, they don't know what kids are on the team. But the kids know they're on the team. And the parents know, and they start cluing in and realizing, oh, that team branding it's a point of pride, which then as soon as those team brands get attached back to the schools pick them up as points of pride. And like Sutton's Bay are the Norsemen. They've always been the Norsemen. They'll always be the Norsemen. And when they show up at a field, they typically bring a pretty good game. So for all of a sudden this year, they had a pretty rough go down at States. it sent conversations across the entire state. Anyone who's ever known the Norseman going, what happened? How did that happen? What kind of luck? Oh, and you feel it just like you would if you were watching football or baseball. So that's how these kids, when they're third, fourth grade, they start looking, because it's not just Traverse City, Michigan that's competing against itself. No, it's working locally but watching globally. It's a big difference, to know that you're a third or fourth grader and you're going and you're seeing some team from Singapore kick your butt and come out on top. You're like, I don't even know what team that was, that they were from Singapore. I'm going to beat them. So what did they do? And you're going to learn what they did, and you're going to try to therefore do it better. You're going to work harder, and it creates these role models. And we haven't even gotten to college. But knowing that college is running these same teams, and then the competition starts showing up. So like DARPA, that's a huge competition.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, somewhere along the line, while they're in middle school, maybe getting into high school, they say, what? What's the RoboCup? Now we're talking about android humanoid robots running around on 2 feet playing soccer. You start cluing in. And then the kids again start saying, I want to go just like in sports. I want to go out back and I want to throw a ball. I want to go in the front driveway and shoot up some layups. Same thing. Kid says, I want to go and learn how to program autonomous control with AI. You're like, what? You're in 7th grade.
All right.
Yeah.
And so there is that culture behind it. I guess it's not as popular. I guess my real question was, how do you get it from becoming this? If you're in it, you kind of know the culture and you know these teams and know these names and know who's good and like they did bad this year. Like, how do you go from that to like
wide cultural acceptance?
Yeah.
where this is where 100% of these kids could actually have a real job earning 100,000 plus. That's a big step. But the major networks are actually helping out. BattleBots is now running. I mean, there's something cool about watching 2 robots that weigh 200 pounds demolish each other on the field. It's hitting mainstream. You're also seeing it in the gamers, where they're showing up on ESPN, and they're going playing, I guess, to date myself, Mortal Kombat back in my day, but now I think it's probably like MK12 or something. I don't even know. But you're following your fans. You're following your favorite player and watching them on mainstream TV. The whole idea that there's even YouTube gaming channels. You just clue in and watch people destroy each other while playing, again, dating myself, Doom, but that's like 20 years old. So mainstream media is picking up on it. But then the connection is, well, how does that kid get included right now? In 4th grade, in 5th grade, in 6th grade, how do they actually get to feel some of that excitement now? And that's where you have to build that competition locally, and then you continue making more awareness by inviting public into these things, and you're always getting new folks coming in, and oftentimes it's only the parents, but you get a few more, so you put them in cool spots. When Nissan hosted one this past January, that was pretty big community outreach. Then you got the entire Nissan Corporation saying, we're hosting in our facility this robotics competition that has 72 teams, and that's a lot of employees that now know that this is happening. That didn't know it was happening before. But it centers back around that idea. You've got to have these public competitive events so that the public can clue in.
I think to add on top of that, like this, I think it was this last week, Snapchat, I think it was at Worlds, they had a story about it, and so, I wasn't there, but I can go on my phone and it just pops up under the Discover stories, and you can go and watch like who won, and like, oh, here's the qualifying rounds, and then, oh, tomorrow's gonna be the finals, and you go and watch the finals the next day. Like, would I have gone out of my way to find that? No, but like it was in my hand and like, I watched it.
And it pops up, and I'm like, wait a second.
That was like perfect timing.
Kind of cool, and you're like, and if you happen to be a parent who sees that, meanwhile your son or daughter is sitting in the kitchen taking apart some object because that's just what they do, Or in my daughter's case, she's building another one of those slime recipes on YouTube right now
Yeah.
that's just gone viral. And all of a sudden I go, I wonder if she would enjoy this. And how do I get tapped in? How do I start?
Yeah.
That's the question for every parent. Once they see that thing that their kid might be interested in, and the more opportunities we can make so that they can feel that passion, feel that excitement, it makes it easier for the kids to become the driving force.
Yeah, and I also think it also kind of have robotics in general. And I disagree with this, but I think it has kind of an image problem where it's to do robotics you have to be super brainy, you have to be like good at math. But in reality, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like like if someone's really good at like just good with their hands, they don't have to necessarily be good at math, and they can go and be a very huge part of the team because maybe other people aren't good at like using their hands and being very hands-on and technical, and someone else is really good at math and someone else can go program and whatever it is.
Well, the parallel is to say that if your kid isn't a quarterback, able to throw a spiral and put it inside a 3-foot circle at 20 yards, they can't play football. I mean, that'd be the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
no, that's just absolutely ludicrous. Any kid can go play football because they just love to play.
Yeah.
They love the kids, they love the team, they love the camaraderie. Maybe they want to be a lineman and they're going to just block because they can just bear down and they know how to push back, but maybe they're quick on their feet, so we need that agile.
Mhm.
Robotics is the same way. Whether you're the artist who loves drawing, but you just think those techie type pictures are cool because of the symmetry, no, there's a spot for you because, as I tell them, there is no object that exists that we go to the store and buy that has not been detailed out in drawings in a patent office somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had to communicate that idea that was in some brainiac nerd's head, translate it into reality, put it down on paper, and tell the story.
Yeah.
We need the storyteller as part of this group. And yeah, of course, the gearhead, the kid who loves taking things apart, loves working with screwdrivers, loves having dirt under their nails and grease. Yeah, we need them too. But we also need the one who's going to stay up till 2 in the morning programming because they love this idea of having a robot actually control itself better than the driver could drive.
Mm-hmm.
But in NASCAR, I mean, you got drivers and you got mechanics. They're usually not the same person.
Yeah.
Same's true in robotics. The kid who's the best driver on the team is usually not the same person who's the best builder. It's not similar skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
They have similar interests. They love the geekiness that is. But yeah, we don't need rocket score IQs. We don't need perfect ACT and SAT scores. We need kids who love this stuff, who get excited about this stuff, who want to just engage.
So if you're to go up to a kid who's like coming into freshman year of high school, who's never been able to do robotics because it hasn't been in their school or for whatever reason they haven't been able to do it, and they're kind of interested, what do you say to them to be like, hey, this is really cool, you should come at least check this out, and then kind of judge it?
Well, I've learned, I guess, over the years what not to do.
Okay.
You don't take that kid, assume that they're a builder who loves grease under their fingers, really ineffective with most girls. We're built differently for a
Mhm.
reason. But you don't take them into the build room where you got guys with fab machines putting in rivets, sawing out metal, and it's loud and it's industrial, because it's a complete turnoff.
Mm-hmm.
Not the place to start.
Yeah.
Instead, you get them hooked into just a easy, fun game, an easy competitive experience where they will see immediate success, where they have to build something simple quickly, and they have to make a strategy to achieve a task quickly, and there have to be a couple other kids doing the same type of task, so that then you're trying to, whether through teamwork or whether through defensive strategy, you're trying to actually do something with it, and it's timed, and you actually let them feel this idea of a simple scrimmage tournament that's not high stakes,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to, if they lose, you don't want to crush them, but
Yeah.
if they, you want them to feel like, I could have actually done that. That's what you want them to say.
Mhm.
I could have done better. At that point, you got them hooked. And you've also, by that point, identified, are they a builder? Are they a programmer? Are they a communicator? Are they a designer? Are they an artist? You kind of help figure out where will they really thrive in that group. Then you introduce them to the actual team event and go from there. But
And then they've kind of found their place.
they've already found their place.
Right.
They know what their place is before they even walk in the door, but for whatever reason, they were curious, so they asked the question, which means they're interested. Your job is to just figure out what area within it is gonna be the best fit, so that they really become valuable. Once you're valued, I mean, that's like any business place.
Mhm.
If you're a valued team member, you're gonna stick around.
Yeah, yeah. So if a big key of getting all this and into more not into more schools, but to make it more popular is to start at a younger age and kind of create these big rivals and create the teams up and like build the teams up. How do you go from where you are now to like trying to get to real rivalries where like you go into if you go into Central and you're like, oh, like this is who this team is, and you know them for their robotics team just as well as you know them for their football team.
Right. Well, everyone knows that the Central have been the Raptors. They've been the Raptors for like at least 12 years, 10, 11, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And their logos are the same. It's this giant raptor dinosaur. They've got big eyes. And they usually create pretty intimidating robots. That's what they do. They also do community outreach. But then how do you go at building to that spot? I mean, everyone knows for the past 5 years, it's like Titans, that's the West. And yeah, there's always been a rivalry across town. But how do you build something so that your school, your identity is there?
Mm-hmm.
It starts with that branding. You figure out who you are as a team once you enter the game, and you start looking outward. That's the biggest part. You got to start looking immediately at who your potential rivals are.
Mm-hmm.
You never view them as people you're going to crush and destroy. I mean, kind of kills the whole sportsmanship thing. But you start looking out there and go, well, who are the veterans? Who's been doing it?
Mm-hmm.
The coolest part about the robotics culture is that everyone's helping.
Mm-hmm.
If you put out a new team request in your high school and you're a small school with only maybe 400 kids in your entire high school, and you've got a question, you send their email over to the Raptors, they'll answer you. They will respond back and say, hey, why don't you come out? We'll show you our build space. We'll come over to your school and we'll help you design your first chassis. That's the culture. And then you get strong enough to stand on your own 2 feet, and all of a sudden you become a rival, and you're like, I want to beat the Raptors.
Right.
And it's done at that point. I mean, you've made the gap. Your school has an identity. You've created a mascot for yourself. You've created team shirts. You've created team logos. You're part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been mentored to the point where you're self-sufficient. And then the natural human desire is to simply do better.
Yeah.
I mean, I think every kid hopes that they'll be more successful than their parents. Same thing here.
Yeah.
It's no different. It grows very organically at that point. But you have to have that seed.
Then how do you get competitions, I guess, is like, you know, if you went to West, for example, and you still live in town, you might still go back and watch a West football or basketball game. How do you get alumni, I guess, of a school or people who are in the same town, who are not parents, who don't have siblings or anybody involved, just to go and like watch something interesting and entertaining? How do you like make that?
You've got to make it easy enough for them to watch. I mean, the reason people tune in to football or basketball is because it's really easy to tune into football or basketball.
Mm-hmm.
It's on TV. It's right there, in your face.
Yeah.
Right now, the best channels for being able to get the robotics pieces out there are through the social media platforms. It's YouTube, it's Facebook, it's Twitter. It's so that as an individual, you start following your favorite teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do, and then all of a sudden those feeds, they pop up on your phone, and you're like, going, oh, look at that! I didn't even realize they were playing this weekend. Let me tune in and go check out their rankings. And then you start finding out, it's like, oh, that's right, there's this competition coming up in 2 weeks. I'm going to put that on my calendar. That's ultimately where you think you want to be, because then you're packing the stands.
Mm-hmm.
You can pack the stands with a bunch of non-related folks, and we've arrived.
Yeah.
But the social media outlets are becoming powerful players just because in branding your identity as a team, you create your own Twitter accounts or I mean, if you're a Central alumni or a West alumni and you're not tuned into the Twitter and Facebook for the Titans and the Raptors, you're missing a lot of really cool stuff. Because then you also start seeing this potential for, if you're an employer, I mean, these kids show up all the time, put in crazy hours of work, are dedicated, are passionate, are team driven. Those are employable skills.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so now you're an alumni, you're 10 years out, and you're part of HR for some company. Go and follow the high school teams. That's what you do. It's
Right.
recruiting. Now, yeah, a lot of the employers haven't really picked up on that yet, but that's why it's new enough, and we start putting it out there and say, this is powerful stuff. You can follow who they are, and you can pretty easily know which teams are seeing success, and then there's just a couple phone calls, and you've got some employees.
Yeah.
You know, you're hiring them right out of high school, and or helping them get through college, see where they want to go.
And I'm sure that's like a giant encouragement to having someone watch you from high school to be not in a bad way, of course, but like be like, oh, this person like helped with this kind of design and this is what they did and they worked well on this team and they succeeded and did all this. Oh, and they're gonna go to college. Maybe we give them a scholarship, or maybe we say like, hey, get through it, dude, get this and this and this, and you're like, you're golden.
I think we're over $7 million in scholarships for the VEX robotics kids going. Those are huge numbers.
Mhm.
That's the difference between if you've done robotics and you're part of one of those teams that's been branded and you're seeing some successes and you're fired up about it, but your parents never went to college and you never had the conversation at home, and you're not even sure if 2-year associate's degree is right for you, but all of a sudden when you're at one of those events and one of the judges comes around and they're wearing a Google hat because they happen to be a designer for Google or Microsoft or Northrop Grumman. Or, I mean, even locally, maybe you're an employee over at RJG or Cone Drive, and you're a kid and as a junior, and you're saying, wait a second, that guy's interested in me, and they're a real professional with real jobs. It becomes, it's an organic meeting space even. For employers to meet kids that have drive and talent, for kids to realize what opportunities exist, and then, yeah, is it possible that companies already have in place employee improvement programs that all of a sudden say, yep, I think that $6,000 degree that you need for those 2 classes over at NMC so you can pick up XYZ certifications and then we can move you into this higher up field? That already happens in industry. It's part of employee retention programs. So those are big pieces that but it goes back to earlier, you said, we've got to get it all under one roof, so it's easier to see, so it becomes a singular message that goes out for whether you're the employer, whether you're the parent, whether you're the alumni, or whether you're the kid. Where do you go to find out?
Yeah. I think that there needs to be a lot of clarity for a student who's going into high school or halfway through high school to be like, okay, can I get scholarships from this? And if so, this is how you do it, and it not be like I'm hoping that I run into a Google employee, but it just be like this one kind of branding. It's the same thing like if you want to be like go to the NFL, like there are very clear things that you have to do and they're really hard, but it's just like, okay, you do this.
There are steps.
Yeah, and it's very clear steps. It's really well defined, and there are people who know the process and can tell you about it and be like, okay, you have to do this. You have to get into these kind of schools.
Absolutely.
You can't go over here, because if you go over here, like, you're kind of done. There's a chance, but like you're kind of done. And I think so having it under one roof or under one system, and having like with college, having the NCAA, everyone hates them, but there is a benefit to it
because there's a pathway.
Yeah,
and it's a pretty clear pathway.
Yeah,
you know, we're in. If you talk about all the different revolutions that have changed the way we think about things, robotics is still in its infancy when we talk about how we educate. Even going back to some of the older platforms that are out there, First Robotics, it's still 15, maybe 20 years old. It's not old stuff. We're single generation here. And it's just like quadcopters and drones, drone racing.
It's like,
That hasn't even made it into the high school competitive scene yet because of the FAA just last year finally settled on what they're going to do with it. But in the next couple of years, just watch how it's going to change. So when we talk about those colleges and those universities, they know the pathway. They know what those degrees are worth, and they know what their employment percentages are out of graduation with those degrees. They're the ones who become your corporate sponsors. They're the ones who, at those events, have a informational space for parents. So between matches, when they're walking around, yeah, go over and talk with the folks at NMC, go over and talk with the folks at LSSU, go over and talk with the folks at Baker College, because they have programs that will carry you through, whether you're only able to spend maybe 12,000 and that's your budget, or maybe you're ready to spend 100,000 because that's your budget. They'll show you the way. Even so far as if you're a first year, if you're a first generation college student, there are programs already out there that will pay for your entire associate's degree. All you have to do is raise your hand. Now, how do you tell some of these kids coming from our area that, you know, we've got over 50% free and reduced lunches around our region? That's our 5 counties. And how do you get that message to them when further education beyond high school is never part of their dinner table conversation? These competition events create that pathway for those conversations to now happen, so that the colleges who know the pathway, they can say, you know what, you've got drive, you've got talent, yeah, your GPA is only a 2.5, but I see what you're doing here, here, and here, and in our program, you're not gonna have to take Spanish. We're a skills-based program, and you're going to excel, and when you're done with this 2 years, there will be these 4 companies that are gonna walk with you along the way, and they'll want to be talking to you when you graduate.
And so there is definitely that, but what about something like a U of M or a state, or I don't know, like a higher level, like
Right.
4-year degree?
Yep.
Is there a way for, or is there this now where it's like, hey, you go to competitions and people seek you out and they see you, like, you guys are winning high competitions and you're captain of the team. Can you get scholarships from that?
Yes. Both First Robotics and Vex Robotics have, I mean, on their online, they have a whole scholarships area devoted for nothing but scholarships. It's not even based on your team's performance. There, it's available to you because you are part of the competitive world of robotics. And schools across the whole country, I mean, that's where that $7 million number came from, that it's there. But like the Vex state championships in the state of Michigan for high school is down at MSU. That's kind of something when you're going in there and all of a sudden, I mean, they've got kind of a nice, it's a closed system. They're going to promote their programs and only MSU, so, you know, don't talk about University of Michigan, but got to kind of wear your colors. A lot of green and white in there, and I'm walking in with my blue and gold shirt. That was a little weird because, Quarkmine just picked blue and gold out of, we were just looking and anyway. But that is the reason why it is, when you look at like Baker College, there's an interesting example. I mean, they're spread out with all of these satellite locations, but they have 4-year through master's programs available all around the state. Now they're actually pushing into a couple more states. They have opportunities available, but yet they haven't yet hosted one of these events. Kettering University, though, they do. They host them. They actually host both First Robotics and Vex Robotics because they know that these kids that come there, they're handing out scholarships, saying, yes, walk up to the table, $2,000 scholarship. You look good. Yep, $2,000 scholarship. Yep. I mean, one acceptance for them, that's $100,000 tuition. I mean, I hate to say it, but it almost feels like they can hand out $2,000 scholarships like candy. It's like a coupon. Well, no, there's definitely that value, but again, it is impractical to think that the club activities that happen when you're isolated within a school or a classroom in the back half of a building that's just meeting after school, no one's ever going to know what you're doing over there. It's not until you become public and put it out there for the state to see, for the world to see, and you actually put yourself on those ranking boards, that you can even know what pipelines exist. Because that's the only way that the colleges and universities can see what's happening. It's too hard for them to go to every single school, because we'd love to think that school counselors have nothing better to do with their time than promote technology type field paths. But the reality is, high school counselors have a lot on their plate that have nothing to do with further higher education. They're very busy.
Yeah.
And you'd be lucky if you could get, you know, a 20-minute conversation about all of your options in different universities, and you were talking to a high school counselor that actually knew what all of those options were. It's just, it's too spread out of a pool to try to weed through.
I'm seeing like a lot of similarities to this and a lot of other sports, non-traditional sports. So if you look at something like for high school and college, I'm talking about, I guess, for like boxing or wrestling or some of these not like very, very defined kind of streamlined baseball, football, basketball, soccer to some degree, where it's like you do this and you do this and you go to college and you get a scholarship from X, Y, and Z schools and that'll cover it. How do you change the culture of these kind of alternative sports and alternative activities? Because there is like definitely a place for robotics and all these other sports and other activities along, like even things like just like a chess club. Like there is a really, really positive place for that, and why can't you be rewarded for being really good at this? And just because it doesn't, like, you know, destroy part of your body, like
Right.
there's no value. But like, how do you get these outside alternative sports and activities to like have that same draw and have the same streamlining into very direct fields? Because I think, like, if you look at the amount of high school football players, like maybe one or two on each team will play in college, and far less will play in the NFL. And so it's not like you have like a giant success rate for following this path, but it's still there and you can still try. Why can't we have that for other things? I guess
Well,
that's my question.
it's I'm going through it right now. My daughter's in 3rd grade, and she loves language. She loves English. She loves spelling. She loves writing. She loves books. She's a communicator.
Yeah.
She is that's her gill. She was for about 4 months' time. She had the top programming score in the state of Michigan because that was her contribution to technology. I mean, of course, I'm in robotics, and of course, she's gonna get introduced, but.
Yeah.
She was more interested in putting her guinea pig on the robot and driving it around the room than actually building a robot. But the question came up. We went to the spelling bee down at the State Theater a couple months back, and it was the Scripps National Spelling Bee. It was a national organization. The winners go off to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And we went back to the school and we said, well, why didn't the school have any teams here? And the response was, well, we missed the deadline and we really didn't have anyone to do it.
Yeah.
So you have that example of local. Yeah, we can do just a local book club or a local spelling bee within your school. Or you can say, no, there's a larger opportunity here, but someone has to look outward and go, what is that larger opportunity? And that is where, that's right now the selling. That's so much of what this Quarkmine is centering around, going, it's great if you do robotics and build Legos after school as a club. That's awesome. Nobody's going to offer your kid a scholarship because they're doing Legos, even if they build the coolest Lego thing after school, and then when they're in high school, they're part of an after-school build and they build a go-kart that runs around the track. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
So it's not until someone says, wait a second, if we want these kids to be recognized, we have to put them on the national scale. They have to be on that stage so that the school can get seen for it and the kids can get seen for it. Which is why goes back to that competitions piece. It's such a vital piece because that's where the national competition piece is happening. They slowly emerge as new competitions come out, but unless the school is really looking out at what is happening at a global community scale, those scholarships don't follow. Unless, of course, they test really well on their ACT.
Yeah.
But that's a different thing entirely.
Yeah.
They're not getting recognized for that accomplishment. They're not getting recognized for that activity. But last year, when West Senior High picked up a governor's recognition letter, you know the school took notice in the district, and I had Paul Soma down there, and he's standing next to with the kids because they got recognition from the governor in a special tribute.
Yeah.
That would not have happened if they'd only done club work after school. It happened because they went to Worlds.
Yeah.
They were at the World Championship, and they had to do a lot of work to get there. So it comes with more recognition, which then, of course, lines up with more potential scholarships, more college opportunities, because people stand up and take notice.
So, with the governor's award, how do you get schools to be like, hey, we should go after this because getting these X, Y, and Z awards and getting promoted and everyone knows our name, that does mean more funding, and that means you can put money into...
It's that sales job, it's not traditional because, well, no, I take them. Odyssey of Mind is another good example. But Odyssey of Mind falls into the typically parent-run or teacher-volunteer-run activity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you compete really well, colleges are looking. They're using it as a recruitment tool. They're watching what's happening. There's scholarships available. But it's changed form. It's now gotten more technical into those science and technologies, and now we're calling it robotics. And it's not that the kids are more geeky now than they were, 20 years ago. It's just now we're calling it something a little different, and
Mm-hmm.
it has a different face on it.
Yeah.
But in the same way, if I could give a message to all the superintendents and all the principals out there, it would be in the same way why you worry about your ACT test scores and your AP placements and your national rankings in US World Report about where your school and what grade your school is getting. You should be worried about how your kids are being viewed in the world of competitive robotics. Because you can get the same rankings, the same recognition, the same extra funding streams because you're being acknowledged. And the only way that acknowledgement is going to come is if the world knows what you're doing. Yeah.
So what's a way for a school to really get some recognition if they are already doing competitive robotics or being competitive in any of these alternative activities?
Well, yeah. I'll pick on Sutton's Bay. They're a great example. I mean, they're Norsemen. They probably show up in the paper for one reason or another about every other month. They do outreach. They do workshops. They do camps. They compete. When they compete well.
Mm-hmm.
The Raptors are very similar. You go to Friday Night Live downtown Traverse City. You're going to see the Titans. You're going to see the Norsemen. You're going to see the Raptors. They're there, being public. But then the other thing that, say, the Raptors have done to really increase their awareness was they host a FIRST robotics competition every year that has teams from all over the state. They've been doing it for like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when people think of competition, really hard competition, because Traverse City is usually one of the harder events in the state during the season, teams pick that event and choose to come to that event because they know that that event is going to be well run, high quality, and high competition levels. And that's what they're seeking after.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good way. Elk Rapids is another one that just recently, this year, past year, they hosted for the first time a robotics competition for the elementary middle school group. I think we counted 5 different media sources showing up, and for a weekend, that was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
It was cooler than baseball, basketball, soccer. It didn't matter what their ACT scores were because they were hosting a competition that had teams from all over the state of Michigan coming to it. And we're watching interest stories of like all-girl teams out of Bel Air. I mean, tiny little Bel Air. It's a small town, but powerful when they all of a sudden bring a group of girls that are articulate, well-spoken, and then are doing well.
Yeah.
Put them in front of a news camera.
Yeah.
They just eat the story up, and it's all happening at Elk Rapids Middle School. That's a big deal. And
I think it's the idea of if you have anything a little bit interesting in a in a small town, the
Right.
local news is gonna pick it up.
They're gonna pick it up, and then we came out of I was at the World Championship, and I ran into a team from Rochester Hills, Michigan, who had come up to an event up here over at Grand Traverse Academy, and they flagged me down, knowing that I was at that event. I was the MC for the day, and they're like, "That was the coolest event ever. We are definitely coming back next year. We just wanted to thank you because it run so well." And I'm like, we're just making it happen at the school. You can't do it without the schools. You can't do any of this without the kids and the parents and the teams and the space. But for a team that's from nowhere near our area, I mean, the opposite corner, to come up and say, "I remember that event at Grand Traverse Academy." Well, what? You've got another whole family from a private school knowing what Grand Traverse Academy is.
Yeah.
That's cool. And it's not because they had a robotics team, but because they hosted a robotics event. And
How do you get? So how does the season work? I guess is my question. So like, is it a different school every weekend or?
Well, it depends on the platform. Just like soccer has a different season than basketball, different than football. All of the different, and then it's used that analogy a little further. If you're an athlete, you can probably pay basketball and soccer and football, and that's why they stagger the season, so that if you are an athlete, you might actually do all three sports.
Yeah.
Robotics is very much the same way. Robotics is a skill set that means that you're good at troubleshooting, you're good at small team work, you're good at programming, you have great design ideas, you know how to solve a problem or at least find a creative solution to it. In our region, there are FIRST robotics competitions, and there's VEX robotics competitions, there's ROV robotics competitions, there's 3D printing robotics competitions, and each one has its own season. Most of the time, everything follows the school cycle. So like right now, most things are wrapping up, preparing, pulling inventory, figuring out what's there, what summer camps are kids gonna take, how do we start thinking about next year. There's a lot of community outreach, demonstrations that are going on over May and June. In the summer's the time when the kids go to camp. Whether it's a 1 hour, $30 camp, or whether it's a full week, $400 camp. Kids are improving their skill sets by taking these extra classes because they know what they want to do come the fall. The first competitions will even start as early as the second week of September. They haven't even been back at school for a week. And they're competing. And for kids who this is their thing, they're going to compete probably once every 3 to 4 weeks. And in between, they're going to be fixing it, building it, changing it. They're going to be watching their favorite teams from around the state and around the globe. They're going to be tuning into Hawaii. Hawaii's doing some pretty cool things with their stuff, I gotta say. And you're just watching, and you're waiting, and you're thinking, and you're trying to figure out how they did it, because they put up a score, but they didn't show you the robot. You're like, I don't know how they did that. It's high. It's 10 points higher than what I thought we could do. And now the team goes back into the drawing room, and they start figuring it out. And they do that all the way through. So they might, in the course of like September through January, they might compete 3 to 5 times, all the while, and that can be anywhere. It could be regionally, it could be here, it could be downstate. Newer teams don't travel as far, which is why it's important to have lots of local events. More experienced teams will hunt out the challenge. They will go to events where they know some of those teams are playing because they're going to be harder. That's cool to see.
How many, if you were to have, to set this up and to be a perfect world, how many events would a team from, let's say, TC West or Central do in a year? And what do you think is viable? Because if they're doing 3 or 5 events in a school year, that's cool. But like, I feel like, having not done it, of course.
Right.
I feel like every other week would be really interesting, but maybe that's too
We've
much.
tried it. Well, there are different types of events. There are, whether you're talking about FIRST robotics, FIRST robotics in and of itself for high school starts in January and ends in April. You have 6 weeks to build, and then you have 6 weeks to compete, and that's it. Everything else outside of that window is about development for the next season, which includes community outreach, so team support, new teams start. But when you're talking about really trying to keep the kids engaged, you do want them to have a deadline every couple of weeks.
Mhm.
So there are what are called leagues. Those are after-school events. They're an hour and a half, and the kids will show up at 5 o'clock. By 6:30 they're done, and they're only going to do maybe 4 rounds of competition. There's maybe 15 to 16 other teams there. It's a lot low-key. There's no real formal judging, but people are keeping score. Even if you don't keep score, they're always keeping score.
Yeah.
Even first graders keep score.
Yeah. It's part of competition.
You know, even in those no-win sports where everybody gets a certificate,
You know who wins.
the kids still know who wins. You know, they know that they just got beat, but at least they're going home with their certificate. I mean, I love for making everyone feel good, but at some point we do have to learn how to manage that emotion of
Yeah.
losing. Because there are good ways to compete and there are very poor ways to compete. And regardless, every adult has to compete. There's no question. So the informal leagues, they're real low commitment. You don't need to prepare presentations. You're not going to be talking to judges. You just go, you take your creation, your modification, whatever it is, you put it on the field, you see how it does, and you evaluate, and then you get ready to go back and fix it. That's it. Then there are your, like your what you call sort of your tournaments. Those are all-day ordeals. Those are the ones where I'd recommend, you know, you're trying to get out there 3 to 5 times a year. You're trying to actually do an all-day. You want to be having a judge from some corporate America. You want that adult to come in and try to evaluate your work as an unbiased, not parent, not coach, and they're going to compare you with the whole picture. Because it's not about just what happens on the field. It's about how would you write it down?
Yeah.
How would you talk about it? Were you creative in your solution? Was the whole team involved? Did you program in such a way that it actually helps your game? I had one team, they programmed their robot to like do the dance at the end of the quarterback runs in, they do the spike the ball and they do the little dance. They programmed the robot to do a dance every time it scored. While really cute, it didn't really help them play the game better. So they didn't get that award. But it was really cool because they were the only ones that had a choreographed
Dance.
You know, and I thought that was pretty cool. But they go out, those are the ones where they're really being evaluated and they're being asked to reflect in person to someone who is an adult who potentially might want to offer them a scholarship, an award, a job, a tuition, something. And those are also the events then that are state qualifying. That's how you move up the ranks. Just like in sports, you have your local level stuff, and you have your regional level stuff, and then you have your state level stuff, and then you have your national level stuff. It's all of it. Same thing exists in robotics. So. Yeah, someone's calling. Yeah, but it's not on my caller ID.
I wasn't sure if it was my phone or not.
Well, you know, it could be a horn. I don't know. Looking out on the
So with those big tournaments, that's kind of what I was curious about. Is there a benefit to doing it more, or is it just too much to do once a month?
Well, if this is your thing, I mean, if you're trying to juggle basketball and driver's training and 2 AP classes and a robotics team, you might be pushing a little bit of burnout.
Yeah.
But robotics isn't the thing that's burning you out. It's the fact that you're doing all of those things. And that's something that every family has to figure out how to manage. It's that time commitment piece. Same can be said if you choose musical while trying to do driver's ed. At some point you simply run out of hours. Or days of the week, if you will.
Yeah, because you're not playing football and basketball at the same time.
You don't.
Yeah.
Because they're on the field 5 days a week and before school, and at some point you have to say yes or no. And the more competitive you get, the more you have to focus.
Yeah.
But for those kids that say this is their thing, this is what they want to do, this is what they love, this is the group that they want to be with, no, you're spending those 3 weeks between matches, you're overhauling your entire robot sometimes. You're ripping it down to nothing but wheels and starting over because you just saw some other team do something that you're like, I didn't know that was possible. And in which case you need those 3 weeks to rebuild, reprogram, retest, and get ready for competition. But then there are other scenarios where it's a little bit more low key, and you say, no, I just want to do small tweaks, in which case the league structures, the scrimmage structures, the ones that are informal, that might compete, say, once a week, and in 4 weeks' time, it's done. Okay, that's fine, that's
Yeah.
good. You're not being recruited, you're not being scouted, you're not
Yeah.
being sought after, because that's not your thing.
Or it's just a way to hone your skills.
Right, or it's a way to just get better.
Yeah.
And so I was entry points is what I call them. You want to make sure you have a little league.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure you have a club. You want to make sure you have a varsity. And each time you step up that rung, you're committing more of your time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the really sort of disheartening things that a parent once told me, she was really, really frustrated after a competition because her team didn't do well.
Mhm.
She was like, but then she heard that the team that won had put in 17 hours on Thursday and Friday before that Saturday competition. And she said, that's not fair. They put in too much time. You have to limit that. My response was, do you have a basketball hoop in your driveway? Would you ever tell your son who loves basketball, I'm sorry, you've already played basketball for an hour this week. You're cut off.
Yeah.
You can't go out into the driveway and play. It's the same analogy for the kids that love this. This is who they are. This is what they
Yeah.
do. This is their identity. And they're going to put in a lot of time. And that's a question everyone has to be okay with. I know I'm not a good basketball player. I like playing pickup games with my cousins.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to get all bent out of shape because they can school me every time.
Yeah.
I'm lucky if I can get one shot in. And then we're going to go hang out, we're going to have dinner, we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
But it means something different to me than it does to them. And robotics is no different.
I feel like that's everyone with all passions, whether it be football or basketball or robotics, it's being able to, if you truly love something, you're going to do it and you're never going to get tired of it.
Right.
If you love powerlifting, you're going to go powerlift every
You're
day.
going to do it, and you're going to be at every gym, and that's where you're going to put your money.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get your memberships.
Yeah.
But I suppose the interesting piece comes out of this going, wait a second. Every kid who pursues robotics aggressively, they want it. They want to learn about it. They want to go after it. Every single kid could also pursue a career in robotics.
Yeah.
100% of them. And that's a little different because all of a sudden parents would sometimes start tuning in going, wait a second, Billy didn't get that career opportunity that Becky got, and Becky's putting in too much time. Wait a second. Well, now all of a sudden, there's money attached to the
Yeah.
back end. There's more scholarship, there's more colleges, but
Yeah.
if it's viewed like a classroom activity, yeah, that's an absolutely justified issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's the school's responsibility to train everybody and make it happen. But any other activity that kids get passionate about is not seen like that.
Do you think there's a disconnect between parents and what they think you can get a scholarship from?
There is, because, traditionally, colleges look at ACT scores, AP, they look at the resume, they look at the essay, the application, they're looking at your GPA.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden, or then they look at athletics. And that's it. But now all of a sudden there's this whole nother emerging field that actually has college admissions counselors showing up at the state level and national level competitions, offering scholarships on the spot. But then again, in a recent, the Michigan Theater Association started doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Huge theater organization, all these cool theater programs are coming in. People aren't noticing at the schools what's happening. It's not until you're at the big national state level event and all of a sudden you're saying, wait a second, you go deliver a monologue there and there's a college recruiter ready to write you a check for a full ride scholarship?
Yeah.
It's another way to expose the schools to these really talented kids, and if you want that exposure, then pursue that skill. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that whether it be theater, robotics, or sports, I think that it traditionally, because it's been helped with the internet, but if you wanted to pursue sports, you get a scholarship or you had to be smart.
Mhm.
Outside of that, you couldn't. Like, if you wanted to do, like, sambo or jujitsu or robotics or chess, like, you couldn't do that.
Right, those pathways didn't exist.
Yeah.
Because we're still in first generation. These opportunities were not available to anyone over the age of 40.
Yeah.
It just didn't exist. I mean, heck, I'm almost 40. Wow. I did not have this opportunity
Yeah.
going to school. So anyone my age or older, this is completely foreign.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have this pathway unless maybe your parents worked for GM or Chrysler or some big manufacturer, and then you could get a summer internship, and that was then the only way. It was through some internship program.
Yeah.
But it's shifting, and it is becoming mainstream competitive with big names following it. So when you go and sit at, out to dinner, and there's 4 screens on the wall, and one of them's showing the golf tour, and another one's showing basketball, and then the third one is showing competitive robotics. And when you just glance at them, they're all being commentated the exact same way.
Yeah.
And the commercials between them are pretty much the exact same.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a lot of money here being pumped in to this kind of exposure piece. And it's a way we're finding talent.
Yeah.
And that's different. That's new.
I think an interesting way to look at it is look at the sports networks. So if you have, Fox Sports and then ESPN, but it's not just one channel anymore with ESPN or Fox Sports. It's Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2 and Fox Sports, like,
Right.
Whatever local things you have. Like, you have Fox Sports Detroit that has, like, everything Fox and then Detroit specific ones, and you can focus on that. And you can get anything you want. And with the internet, you can find very, very niche kind of things that were just like you had to be in a certain area to be in this culture, to like be a part of this. Now you don't have to.
Right.
Like being a giant mixed martial arts fan, I go back to like looking at jujitsu. Like, you wanted to learn jujitsu 20 years ago, you had to go to Brazil. You went to the Gracie family and you learned there. Now you don't have to. There's a place in TC.
Right.
And he's fantastic, and you can do whatever. And now you can go online and learn anything you want about certain moves or whatever. And it's the same thing with robotics, or the same thing with any kind of sport that wasn't in every high school.
Right.
Like the fact that rugby has become more of a thing. Like, that wasn't a big thing 20 years ago.
Community-based teams. It's, the accessibility has changed so much. It's not just for the really smart hobbyists that can figure out how to do electronics because they have all this background.
Yeah.
No, that was true 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now you go down to Toys R Us and you pick up a cool robotics kit and you hand it to a 7-year-old. They're going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to max it out, and they're going to be ready for the next cool thing. Right? Legos are getting cooler. Technic is getting cooler, and there's programming across the board. There's apps for that. It's all become so accessible. So then it just goes back to, once you've found that interest, that talent, you say, well, how do we actually want to cultivate that, and how do we want to get recognized for that?
Mm-hmm.
And that recognition piece only really comes in if you're wanting to go to the next level up.
Yeah.
And so if you're an independent team, there's a great homeschool team right here. 5801, they've been doing this for about 5 years. This is an exposure piece for them. They're getting to compete on a national stage, which has been traditionally schools only.
Mm-hmm.
But their kids are getting the same kind of visibility to those colleges. They have the same opportunities because they didn't just want to take a class, but they said, no, we want to enter the global arena.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's accessible.
So if someone goes through high school and goes through middle school and does robotics, is there a platform for doing it at like a quote unquote pro level, and like they just like really love the competition of robotics and like they want to build robotics to beat each
Absolutely.
other up?
God, you ask any high school kid if they love this stuff and they're big gamers, they're like, oh, I'm going to start my own YouTube gaming channel. I'm going to pick up sponsors, and once I hit a million followers, and I'm like, do you know how hard it is to get 1 million followers?
But at the same time, it's not. You
But
just
yet,
do it.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm like, I date myself and I'm going, what? But yet, they follow this stuff and they're getting paid.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it'd be the same as like, I guess, me as a sixth grader saying, I'm gonna go pro and get a professional sponsor who's gonna follow me at BMX bike racing. Yes, it happens, and you can follow it, you can do it. I mean, those are pro levels. My brother-in-law, he actually games. He builds games for all of the platforms, and he's paid very well, 100% of the time. He is running a team who writes software that is showing up all over high schools across the country with kids playing these games. But that's then, I guess, the other interesting area. There are adult competitions too, because some of these competitions are really hard. Like the Google X Prize, $1 million prize.
Yeah.
If you go after that. Granted, I mean, to win, you've got to put a rocket on the moon.
Okay, fair.
But there are teams from around the globe that are trying to do that. And these are adults, sponsored by corporations that are basically, Google throws out the question, can private enterprise put a rocket on the moon? Well, that's a big question a lot of folks are trying to answer. The autonomous car, that was another one that's a lot of times handled. Your adults, they're putting out drive cross country, completely autonomous. This was before Google did it, before Tesla got into it, before Uber said they're launching in San Francisco with it. That was a real competition for adults to take on. You had some university students also, but these are also university students in graduate and PhD programs that are being funded by major corporations, and they're being, it's a lot of money being dumped into that. But then if you want to go pro robotics,
like I'm thinking like BattleBots or something.
Right,
like
right.
that.
BattleBots is always, but even that, is that really? I mean, for the fame and glory of competition, they'd be like, yeah, you're 1% of all college basketball players are going to make it pro.
Yeah.
I don't know what the stat is. It's probably a little higher than 1%,
Yeah.
I hope. But what percentage of all high school competitive robotics kids are actually going to go pro and actually keep doing competitive robotics beyond as an adult, like in BattleBots? It's probably a very small percentage.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is, for that, we'll pick on football. For that other, say it was 1% that made it pro out of college, that other 99%, are they making money in any way because of their football skills?
If you wanted to, I'm sure you could.
They could go teach camps, they could run workshops, but they're not playing the game in a pro fashion. So there's most of them are going to pick up a regular day job. And they'll make the bulk of theirs, but then they'll make some side money because they still love the game.
Yeah.
So they want to be involved in the game. Doesn't mean they're pro, but
Yeah.
they're still earning some income. The flip side of me then in that skill set that they gained, unless of course, like you can't underestimate. I mean, the power of teamwork, the power of taking one for the team and being part of being one cog in the wheel that's driving the system, and you cover your role on that team very well. That's a life skill. Robotics is the same way. The only difference is if we're teaching you how to program at a high school level competitively and you're doing really well at it, well, I wouldn't call them competitive opportunities and career paths. Whether you go into HTML web design, whether you go into infrastructure for network managing, whether you go into security systems, whether you're going into programming the next machine assembly line, that's a direct path. Your skill there with that competition is the same skill that you are now getting paid $100,000 for as a professional. It's just not a competition.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I guess it is. Industries are always competing for more business, but it's different. I guess the skills are a little more directly transferable.
Yeah,
I like that.
Fair. I was just thinking, like, just going back to, teams or what people follow, like, getting kids interested in high school teams, and then, like, seeing, of course, everyone, when you're 7, wants to play for, the Lions or whatever, but you see that and you're like, that does get you into it. That's really what I was
Well, I was New Zealand, college, their robot, I mean, they could clear the field like something I've never seen before. I mean, their robot was just massive, and it was fast, and it could do what the high school robots couldn't even come close to touching. And you're like, wow, that was good. That was really good. New Zealand. Okay, so we need more of these kids to start seeing what that is, knowing that, yeah, it's still in its infancy, and their kids are most of the time not even looking past their own backyard. But for those kids that were there at that world championship, which is, 1,700, well, it was about 1,200 teams with, more than 4,000 kids. They all know who New Zealand is now because they saw it happen. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, I need a competitive team at my college. So they can go try to beat New Zealand. I mean, assuming they're not going to move to New Zealand. But
yeah,
I mean, it's something when you start identifying that. I mean, it was a little sad. I didn't even see Michigan State or University of Michigan make it. They're not even in the conversation.
Yeah.
But knowing that they have teams that get to compete, but it's still it's just so new that those aren't the rock stars right now.
Mm-hmm.
Those high school teams, they're the rock stars in competitive robotics. No, actually, there is adult drone racing. That's pretty exciting.
No,
Give us a year, and I think we'll have that in Traverse City.
Are they starting the a drone park in there's a drone warehouse that they're doing?
Yeah. There's a lot of movement to try to actually raise more awareness about what the goods and the bads that come with drones. But ultimately, I mean, we've had competitive RC flying for years. People have been flying RC planes since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And they're cool. But now what we're seeing, like Detroit has some amazing indoor arena. I mean, it's like rodeo. It's dirt tracks, it's low bars, it's hoops. I mean, they're flying through these things at 40 miles an hour with drones that are about 12 inches wide. That's it. In first person view with camera goggles on, and you're like, when you see that as a kid, you're like, I need to get better at driving.
Yeah.
Because you just want to do it. And there's an allure. There's no age restriction on that.
Yeah.
It's not school. I mean, I'm sure there will be school ones soon, but that's been purely a hobbyist. And they might be making some prize money, but they're not doing it for the prize money.
Yeah.
They're doing it because it's just freaking cool.
Yeah. I think that's kind of how all sports activities really start. It's like you have a bunch of hobbyists who really love it, and then people go, oh, that's really cool, and then, oh, I can do that too, and it just kind of builds.
Well, then they start picking up sponsors, and
Yeah.
it's I'm sure that, as I just said, that there's probably all just hobbyists that are doing it. I'm going to guess that somewhere there's a team that's sponsored, and it's a bunch of drone racers, and they're probably paid fairly well to represent their team because that company wants that brand on the side of that drone that's flying at 40 miles an hour and winning.
Yeah.
Because they might want to be emerging themselves as a drone leader in technology and who knows what.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think there was I don't know what show it was, but there was like an online show of a tournament of drone racers, and it was sponsored by a couple of people, and they had like an indoor arena like you were talking about. But it was very much like you'd see in any kind of competition, where it's just like there are actual corporate sponsors who are paying these people, and if you don't get the prize money, you're still getting paid to do this.
Right. Well, it's expensive. I mean, you crash something, you fly something, just learning how to deal with it. It's an expensive thing, and as soon as it can become a public spectacle, then all of a sudden that sponsorship advertising starts kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
And companies that are looking for that sort of a marketing channel. We're not talking about nonprofit events here. These are advertising opportunities because they're happening, and there are hundreds of thousands of viewers now. Well, those hundreds of thousands of viewers are worth dollars to somebody because of a sponsorship advertising thing, so that logo is going to smack up somewhere on the screen.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the world of advertising and marketing, and there's nothing new about it. And that's why just the need to have those events happen, not just once a year. That doesn't tell anybody anything. It's when you can actually create favorites for the audience. So you got to be able to follow your favorites.
Yeah.
You got to be able to track them. You got to be able to cheer with them when they win, feel depressed when they lose.
Yeah.
And when they have that comeback at the second half of the last day, and you want to be on your feet and go, and you want to just be glued to that. But you can't have that audience reaction if you don't show them and actually let them get attached to the teams. So you've got to have that repetition of a season of events.
Mm-hmm.
One event isn't going to do it.
Do you think it would help if it was not necessarily televised, but like live streamed somewhere? Like
that is happening more and more. Where it is the like the Worlds was live streamed, and for the folks back home that wanted to clue in, absolutely, you could see it and you could watch it. Now there's a big issue on commentating, because typically a live streamed robotics event is going to have a camera on a field.
Yeah.
Because there's nobody paying to produce the show.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's no one in between, like, in between the rounds saying, oh, this is what this team
At
did.
the event there is, but without having a camera crew,
Yeah.
like a production crew there who's switching at the video mixer,
Yeah.
that becomes a different piece. And it's almost untouchable for the elementary, middle school, and high school type events, because the added cost that comes with that.
Oh, yeah.
So until you get that volume, but then as soon as you say have a season of events, and then you get the sponsor to come in and say, yes, this is yours, because all of these events have commentators.
Mm-hmm.
They all have MCs and game announcers. That's what makes it cool for the spectator.
Mm-hmm.
It's now, and that's where they're starting to pick up this idea of getting them televised with this opportunity for the video footage. But it means needing to have enough attention so that it's worth the TV production company's time to come in and do it.
Yeah. I can even imagine something like, even like doing a pay-per-view on YouTube. Just like $2 to watch this. And for every parent that can't go to Worlds because it's too expensive, or it's a weekend away from work, or whatever it is, they're going to pay that $2, and then you immediately make the cost of getting a production team.
Right.
Or have the production team like take all the monetization that you get from having like put it on their.
Let them say, you know what, we have that's part of Quarkmine's hope in not affiliating with any one school district, but saying, you know what, we know how to run these events at the elementary and middle school. We can make them happen. We can have game announcers, we can have your volunteers, your judges, we know how to run the awards, we know how to keep things moving flow so that when the teams show up, they're going to get through their match schedules and it's going to be happening quick paced. We know how to announce that stuff.
Yeah.
And if now there are all of a sudden a dozen or so of these events between September and January, well, that means there's a single point of contact for a production crew to say, dude, let me take a little bit of that liability right now for this first year, because I've got three-person camera that'll be there, and I've got the editor, and we're going to live stream that up, and it's a step further than what we would do as it's not our wheelhouse to actually live stream stuff, and but over the next few years you're going to see huge gains in that area as these things start happening more and more. But it's because schools are strapped.
Yeah.
They're looking at budget cuts and closures of buildings and trying to figure out how to pay for the next year's math curriculum, and they're strapped.
Yeah.
And these aren't yet events that you can charge an admission to.
Yeah.
They're not cool enough yet with enough of a fan base.
Yeah.
So the traditional model is you're struggling to break even. And it's sort of a chicken or egg kind of thing.
Yeah.
How do you take that leap?
It's almost like you have to have someone who's willing to not necessarily donate their time, but just kind of like be interested in it enough to be like, hey, like, if I'm going to be commentating this anyway, I might as well like go out and spend $150 to get 3 cameras I can stream with, and you just need a laptop and 2 microphones. Like, that's not a lot of equipment.
No, it's really not, and it's then just having that one extra person who's there who can
just like flip the camera,
who can do checking the camera. And we after going to the States event, we're going to have a field cam on each field. That's what it helps with the audience experience. That's the first thing. We've got to make sure the audience who comes in can see the field. Because if grandma's there and she's sitting in the bleachers, uncomfortable already, and she can't see what her little daughter's doing on the field because there's too many kids down in the front row, that's not cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're already going to have cameras down on the field happening. And then it's just pulling out that one extra sort of live action camera, whether it's flipping to the referee or the kid who's on the field who can get that. That's where the viewer at home really starts paying attention. When I'm putting up videos for like coming out of Worlds, I do some pictures, they get maybe 100 views. If I do just a video of a match, that might get 300 views. If I do a video of the match edited with pieces of commentary about what just happened on the field because the kid told me the success and the failure, and then the parent, when I say, so what was most exciting? Now I've got 1,000 views where they actually clicked.
Yeah.
With over 3,000 views where they at least tuned in for, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
That's a slightly, each level's a little higher.
Yeah.
To build out your web-based audience, we need to be able to get to that next level. We're ready for it, we're prepared for it. It's just getting that to become mainstream.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that, it's anything with doing and building an online presence and building content, is it has to be consistent and it has to be good. Always.
You
it doesn't have to be
it.
often, but it has to be consistent, it has to be good. So if every competition in Michigan has the same thing, that's just what you do. And so everyone starts to go, and it has to be in the same place. You can't have it in like a West has their page and Central has their page.
Easy for the public to find, so they can follow it and they can put up with their RSS. I don't know, does RSS feed even, would that alert for new content like videos going up? Or however, it needs to be easy so that the fans can tune in easily. That's absolutely important. I mean, at the state level, goodness, there's like 36 events around the state of Michigan. There could be videos going up every single week live on Friday nights and Saturdays from September through February of Michigan teams with interactive play-by-play type analysis happening midweek about the different things that are happening at different regions.
And this team's going to be out because...
Right, we just saw them go down at the end of the match with a complete redesign of their robot. I don't even know if they're going to make it back to the field next week, but they're coming back on they're coming back on November 22nd. So we'll be all watching to see if they make it back to the field. Yeah. Those sorts of things, it becomes possible. But it is the next level of that public outreach, which then of course drives more sponsorships, which drives more exposure, which drives more college scholarships, but you've got to be able to make some noise.
Yeah, and I think it's getting someone to just do that. And it's so hard to get someone to just be like, okay, I'm going to go to every single event. And it's even like, it has to be consistent even with the people who are commentating. I think that simple thing alone, and so this person, and they're like, if you do it enough, you get really good at commentating specific things, and you start to know all the teams, you know the backstories, and so it's not just, okay, well, it's going to be in Elk Rapids this weekend, so, Bob and Jill are going to be commentating. And
just like, who are they? They don't, and you get weird inconsistencies, it breaks down. We found that John and I, we love running these events. We love organizing the volunteers. We love, both of us, I mean, I love commentating more than he does, being right on the field and getting to know the teams. I was honored this year to be asked to be the game announcer for the first robotics over at Central. I mean, that's just, it's cool, it's fun, and that level of consistency, even if just following then your northern teams, I mean, all your northern teams are going to play. If there's 8 or so events at the elementary, middle school level, and we're telling every team here to try to play in at least 3 of them, and there's 60 teams from the entire Leelanau, Old Mission, and up through like Elk Rapids, all the way down to Kingsley. That's a pretty cool region to look at and start knowing who these kids are, and then where are they going, the interest stories. All of a sudden, it gives you a platform to talk about. So people, they will tune in. They will. I gotta believe that they will. Yeah. But like I said, it's that consistency piece, so that the film crew that shows up They know what to set up. They know where to go. They know how to mix it. They know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put, traditionally that burden has always been on a teacher volunteering their time after school
Yeah.
to do it at one event, one time for the entire year, and
Yeah.
then they're done. And it doesn't work. There isn't a consistency piece. So you have a lot of hiddenness as far as whether events are good or bad.
And I think you can definitely monetize that, but it's just doing it.
Right.
And it's finding someone who's either got the time or has got the vision to do it and go out and be like, okay, all of this is already in place. Someone just has to like connect a cord to a computer and
Right.
put up a camera.
And in the beginning, it's a risk. This isn't a nonprofit venture.
Yeah.
This isn't something you're just going to go out and say, hi, I'd like a donation for,
Yeah.
I'm going to need $50,000 to be able to do this.
But you don't
No.
need $50,000 either. It's the internet. Like
It's
you
the
can
internet.
do-
It's the internet. It's
Yeah.
free. So you need, well, that's the reason why we bought, just so we could even go around the table and get nice video footage of kids, we bought a Mevo and a GoPro,
Mhm.
just because we said we had to be able to at least get
Yeah.
judges footage
Yeah.
so we could do things in post and just at least put up videos that were a little interesting
Yeah.
rather than a single static shot. But at the events, it's these aren't nonprofit ventures. These are very much for-profit ventures, which you can also, for some folks in the community, that's the Scrooge of the world, and I'm like,
That's how the
no,
world
it's
works,
not.
yeah.
I mean, it's the way the world operates, and it's just saying that if you get someone who's doing something well, they should be able to get paid for what they
Yeah.
did. They're not gonna change if they're not doing a good job, they're not gonna get paid. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But if there's a value to that, it should be paid for, and that's no different than a nonprofit. I mean, they have boards of directors, they have classes. You pay for those just the same.
Yeah.
The only difference is that one's really owned by a board of directors. The other one is owned by a couple of individuals who carry the vision and the weight of it. So it's
I think that
Yeah.
that's such an untapped thing. If it's already
is.
not being, it's remarkably easy to like start a YouTube
Right.
stream.
Right.
You need a computer and like maybe 3 cameras and an internet connection. And,
And-
the fact that that's not being done.
it's all in its infancy. It is I mean, I hate to say, I love being in the classroom. I did.
Mhm.
10 years. It was really great, but my interest and passions are really at that regional level, because if we don't make more noise about it, then people won't clue in.
Yeah.
And when we talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, it is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The analogy I use is back into the horse and buggy day. Henry Ford comes along and he makes a car. The horse didn't do anything wrong, but found himself without a job.
Yeah.
If we don't actively work on getting more kids excited about entering this field of problem solving, it's not a bunch of mechanics, it's problem solving, on your feet, innovating new ideas and solutions to real issues. The current revolution around the automobile and the autonomous car, as dark as this sounds, someone's going to have to teach the car how to make a decision when it comes down to an oncoming car collision or a pedestrian on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Those are hard choices to make, but at the end of the day, someone's going to have to make that programming choice and teach the car how to decide life and death situations.
Yeah.
So if we don't actively figure out how to raise awareness and make it so that those kids out there that right now have trouble paying for their lunch at school, they're creative. They're wickedly creative.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that should stand in their way. But if we don't figure out how to bring them into the game, we've got a real problem.
Yeah.
And this public awareness piece, going back to why I actually left the classroom, I can do more at a regional level by simply improving the competitive event experience and making it happen more often so that it becomes more visible. And then that next piece is, how do you tie into your broader audience? How do you now stand up and say, watch global robotics competition this is what Northern Michigan is doing. Stand up and pay attention. Because when we're talking about 17,000 teams across the planet in 44 countries, and it's not happening yet.
Yeah.
I feel like we're somebody standing on the top of a mountain. We're like looking down, going, "This is going to be when it goes. It's
Yeah.
going to really go."
Yeah.
And that's why we positioned Quarkmine the way we did, as a for-profit company that could be an expert in this field that has one very clear mission: produce amazing events, so that over the next few years it goes from 1 or 2 events in a year to a dozen events in a year to 24 events in a year to
Yeah.
events that are being live stream broadcast all over. And now when we, instead of us looking out at Ohio, or out at Hawaii and California, watching what they're doing, instead of us looking over at Singapore trying to figure out how they're building their robots, they're turning around going, why is Michigan producing such a huge percentage of creative problem solvers? And it goes back to that exposure. Kids have to have the role model. They have to be able to see it.
Yeah.
And that goes right back to that production side.
Yeah.
You ramp it up, get to that next place.
Well, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's definitely going to get there. It's just who's going to do it. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that you're definitely on the right path with it.
So we're looking, we're keeping our eyes open. It's getting more folks to just step into the game and say, yeah, this is a mission, this is a worthwhile thing, and I don't mind putting a little risk out there and a little bit of legwork. It's not built yet.
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting in sweat equity right now.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
A lot of sweat equity. It's easy once the ball is rolling and the ship is going and there's a model out there, but that point,
Yeah.
someone already did the legwork. This is the legwork. That's exciting.
So where can people find you online?
Quarkmine.com.
Alright.
Quark as in the smallest elemental particle. The quark makes up all protons, electrons, and neutrons. Tiny little thing. Quark. And of course, we're just mining for those little gems. So Quarkmine, not the brain,
Got it.
mind.com. Facebook's another great place. Same Facebook/Quarkmine. Lots of fun videos, photos, all the different events that are happening. Of course, there's workshops, there's camps. Anybody wanting to know how to get started, that's what we're here for.
All right.
There's no reason anyone doesn't start a team. Start
Awesome.
them today.
Awesome. Well, Philip Leete, thank you so much for stopping
No,
by.
Sean, it's been
great
it's been
talk.
fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much.